The Learning Journey in association with Turn It Up Tuesday, hosted by Ross Audio presents Did You Know? This week we'll focus on one slave uprising on a ship. No, it's not about the Amistad mutiny that occurred off the coast of Cuba. It's about the Creole Uprising. The Creole ship uprising highlights the struggle of enslaved people to resist and find opportunities to emancipate themselves from their enslavers. I like this story because it shows the power of love and how people can come together. For our disclaimer, the information presented here is based on a cross-examination of relevant literature and sources. Hence, the accounts and artifacts presented are connected to dominant discourses and thoughts. Please listen carefully and make your own conclusions. All sources are listed on my YouTube channel. The story begins with one enslaved person named Madison Washington. He escaped to Canada in 1840, leaving his wife behind in America. Washington would return to rescue his wife, but he was captured and sold. This was love beyond boundaries. He was then placed on the Creole with other enslaved people to be shipped to the New Orleans. In total, there were over 130 captives on the Creole. Washington is very critical to the story because he had a taste of freedom before and seemed to have gained information regarding emancipation in the Caribbean. He may have heard about the Amistad mutiny before. The reality is that the taste of freedom would force Washington to make another attempt for freedom. Knowing what is required for a successful bid for freedom, I am sure that Washington would be observing, assessing the situation on board. He would have certainly have worked out the ratio of enslaved people to the crew. The Creole housed women and men in separate spaces on the ship. Washington seemed to have had some cooking skills, and his duty on the Creole was that of a head chef for the enslaved. And cook he did. As he cooked, however, I am sure he would observe and examine the surroundings. I am sure he would have used the opportunity to check out if others were enjoying the food and at the same time looking around for weapons. According to one source, he must have used this time to find weapons and observe the crew's routines. I guess this undercover work was working. According to one source, the cover was blown on November the 7th, 1841, when one guard realized that Washington was in the location of the women's holding. Washington realized he had to act now. He pushed down the person who was on watch and shot another, then yelled to the others to execute their plan. One crew member fled the scene to lure the others, and the captives went after him. Washington was aware that the only way to freedom was to head towards the Caribbean area. Remember, emancipation for enslaved people in the Caribbean took place decades before slavery was abolished in the United States. Therefore, a demand was made to take the Creole ship to the British territory. During this time, the fight for freedom continued and the crew were locked up and guarded. The ship arrived in Nassau, a British territory. I am not sure what happened, but one member of the crew was able to contact the American consul. Without delay, America contacted the British government for Bahamas. The British sent troops to take charge of the ship and arrested the enslaved people fighting for their freedom. After reviewing the case, the local courts stated that they could not make a judgment because this case was out of their limits. Even the President of the United States got involved in this situation. America wanted to send warships to extradite the enslaved people. Here's a sample of his letter. I regret to be obliged to acquaint you with a very serious occurrence in a port of the Bahama Islands. The bottom line is that the President suggested that these persons were still enslaved, although they were in a territory that had abolished slavery decades ago. He also wanted the authorities to hold the enslaved people until the warships came, but this request was rejected. One argument put forward is, if England enslaved people, would a free person be enslaved on arrival in England? The argument put across by America did not make sense. One thing for sure, the news about the new arrivals would have brought the free people to the surroundings. And of course, they must have gathered nearby the ship. Based on one source, the crew tried to make a break to New Orleans, but they were stopped by the British Army. After a few meetings, the 19 mutineers were placed on shore and sent to confinement. The other enslaved captives, they were given their freedom. A trial was held and Washington and the other conspirators were freed. This case was a landmark. The enslavers were not able to continue their injustice. Washington is considered a genius, a hero for the enslaved people, and a bright star for freedom, according to one source. He must be considered as a guiding light for all of us. Like Washington, we must be strategic in our walk on this planet. Washington's role on the ship gave him access, opportunities to ensure that others could experience freedom like himself. My question to you is, are you using your access where you are to impact others positively? Like Washington, we can be guiding stars wherever we are. We can be change agents. Just remember, Washington created the opportunity, and you can create opportunities for yourself and others. Thanks for listening. Over to you, Rossi.